We are serving you with beekeeping training and starting work with beekeeping job. Why beekeeping? First, beekeeping is a job that can be started with minimal capital and create a job for the investor. With minimum capital, you can create a job. In this job, you don't need any special structure or building. As the famous saying goes, you don't have that much construction, so most of the treasures are here. Well, this is another news of beekeeping is that you don't have any waste in beekeeping. That is, if you buy a beehive device like this year, if you take care of it properly, you can use it for many years. When the name of beekeeping is mentioned, the first thing that comes to the audience's mind is originality, but, well, original beekeeping has other products besides the originality of other products.
Like flower pollen, like propolis, like royal jelly wax and real bee venom, these are other real bee products that you can see the cycles of, as the saying goes. See the necessary training. You can use these original bee products. Well, for beekeeping, we need a series of tools, apart from the hives that we buy now. We also have a series of beekeeping tools that we must have and use to start working. Well, the first tool we need is a spatula or lever. This tool is used to open the beehive door, and from this part you can separate the combs and easily take out those boxes from inside the beehive. And with this part, they open the hive door, so the next device is smoke. Smoke has different shapes, but the most common shape is the one that has a core that can be easily removed from the hive. Well, in this part, you can use coal if it is available to the beekeeper, the best thing for smoke. There is cow dung that is added inside this, and in the beekeeper series, there are conditions that the beekeepers are not allowed to visit. You can easily use smoke and the beekeepers become calmer.
And there are times when you open the door of the conda. Beekeepers gather in these parts of the hive, and if you see the door of the conda, they will fly a little smoke that you use comes down the conda. It will get the beekeeper out of the way, and you can continue your cartoon easily. Well, the next new tool is the one that I mentioned. This is when you want to remove a comb from a beehive, or not. You want to bring out a beekeeper. Leave them in the same hive. Add them to another hive. So with this issue, you'll get rid of the beekeepers who are in the box, and you can take the box out of the hive, and also the beekeeper. This part of the collection can be put aside and close the hive door easily. Well, there are a series of tools. There are tools for wax embroidery. There are a series of tools. You want your own. There is a wax board from Friday. I will explain how you use this tool in the waxing section of your service. There is also another tool called waxing. This device that blows the wax to the surface inside the frame. Well, this is the galvanized wire for wax embroidery, which we use on waxwork. Well, the next device is the syrup feeder. This syrup feeder is used when we want to feed Zamba. It has different types. This type of syrup is called a frame, that is placed inside the frame, and they pour the syrup in. This part, this sorbet has a float. It must be a sorbet, and they must have a float, which I will show you here. For the sherbet, which is placed, the syrup you pour here. I mean the syrup is a combination of water and sugar. Well, you pour it into this. It will float, and they will put the Zamba on it. They harvest it, and it prevents the bees from drowning in the syrup. There is another type of syrup. This is placed on top of the frame, which means it is placed on the shoulders and under the log door. There must be pieces of wood in this shape and size inside this container, because when you pour the syrup, the Zamba will be mounted on them, and they will pick up the syrup, and they will no longer be immersed in the syrup. This also has different shapes, both square and rectangular, which I have explained to you. Well, these are placed exactly on their shoulders inside the hive, and syrup is poured into it, and the hive is closed and the bees feed inside the hive. So the next device that I will introduce to you, there are beekeeping clothes and gloves, which also have different models. It means a shirt with a skirt. It has a model of pants with it. The color must be white. Now they use yellow, dark colors. It is not recommended for beekeeping clothes because it makes the bees angry. So white fabric is used, usually for this part in the front. If you want to repair it, you should definitely use black, so that you can see better than other colors. Well, this is from beekeeping clothes. This is a sock for beekeeping, because sometimes the bees are very angry. This is a sock for beekeeping, because sometimes the bees are very angry. There is no such thing. They will be easily stung by stretching, and when the beekeeper gets stung, he will automatically feel tired and less able to work. Gloves are also available in different types. The handles are plastic, and there are other gloves that are made of the same material for beekeeping, but these are better. It stings less than them. There is another model of this beekeeping hat, just a hat. This is not the old part. And when the bee is quiet, or there are a few bees, they use this type of hat. Well, the next device that we need a lot in beekeeping, it's been a while. We want to collect pollen from our bees. We use this device. Well, these two thorns are falling behind this part. Well, this is a moving part. Well, if you put this under the bee when it wants to enter with pollen, there are two pollen registers next to the hind legs of the bee. Bring the pollen in that way. The bee will pass by and the pollen will get stuck here and fall into this part of the Jamavari reservoir like this. Well, we can collect the pollen in this way with this device very easily. Here is another strainer. It is not available now, but this device is used for a certain time. That is, until around 10 in the morning. After that, we will remove this to the weapon. The bees can enter easily, but when we want to collect pollen, we will lower it again in such a way that the famous pollen collection operation can be done. Again, well, pollen usually starts entering the hive early in the morning, which means bees start bringing pollen from around the time it gets light until around 10 or 11 in the morning. After that, the bee enters the nectar phase. It goes more towards the nectar of the flowers, and the flowers are ready, because if we keep collecting pollen, it will be necessary to remove the pollen from the hive, and as a result, it will reduce the fertility of the property. In the end, we will suffer from population decline. Well, I say this for the reason that we can remove these until 10 in the morning. Pollen has different targets. First of all, it is the original bee products that are being bought at a good price, and it also has medicinal properties. At some point, beekeepers should think about the fact that, for example, when it comes to August, the pollen in nature will be less. When the pollen is reduced, the queen's fertility decreases, the population decreases, so you can collect the pollen in the season when there is little pollen in that year, or, for example, at the beginning of spring, when there is little pollen. You can make it into a pollen cake and give it back to the hive to stimulate the queen and start fermenting the pollen. The purpose of collecting pollen is to go to the tools for harvesting the seed. Well, suppose we have harvested the seed. Now you want to separate the wax from the seed and clean it properly. So, what are the tools we need? The first tools of this tool are called vaults. Vaults. Why? Because the poles that we are going to remove are like this. It has different parts and is available in different sizes. It is made in this way. Now it has a half. It has a smoothness. It has a shape. Well, the main vault is mounted on this. This is how it is installed on this well, on this part of the leak. The next tool we need is a rake. If you pay attention, the method of the shoulders is covered by a thin layer of wax, which we need to remove. That we take these out later and put them in the extractor, and this wax is separated from the original wax. Well, the next tool is the extractor. This is a manual 4-frame extractor that you can put 4 frames in this device. After it is polished, you put it inside this device. There is an outlet valve that must be closed well. After trimming the sequins, we remove the sequins. We take the frames and put them inside this tool, and by using centrifugal force, the principle is removed from the wax without damaging the frames. You see, wax is very important for beekeepers. Why? Because in addition to the production of each kilo of wax, 8 to 12 kilos of bees must be consumed to produce 1 kilo of wax. Well, it is important for the beekeeper to be able to use the wax woven this year for many years. How do you do this? With the extractor, they remove this principle without damaging these pimples. Well, for this, an extractor is used, and the original is separated from the wax without damaging the woven wax. Well, after getting out of these at all, there is an outlet here, an outlet valve. We put a level here. Well, together with the original, some impurity like pieces of wax, propolis, and flower pollen are removed. There is a need for this to pass through a sieve so that this occupation is taken for this purpose. This device is used, which is also a strainer, so there is a piece of net here. Thanks to those pieces of wax, he can see here. These pieces of wax, which are on this filter, will stay and the clear essence will go down. And finally, there is an outlet valve that comes here for the packaging part. Now inside Aleppo or Deba with any worship or especially these half kilo or 1 kilo containers or whatever size you want, you can do the packing here. Another tool that beekeepers definitely use is the queen barrier network. Well, this is the season when we want to get honey in order to limit the queen's egg production, so that the egg is not filled too much. We will be able to harvest honey during the harvest. Well, when this hive is in the frame, we want to add according to it. Well, we will add this shape. Well, the worker bees will reject this. They can say above, but the queen cannot cross this obstacle, and therefore, according to us, we don't have any breeding anymore. And according to it, it is special for collecting honey. There is also a device similar to this. We call it a trap. It is completely similar to this. It is for us to harvest in Iran, usually in the month of Shariva. The bees start collecting propolis. It is a resinous substance that is usually collected from the nectar of trees, plants and trees that have nectar. Bees collect it for us, in order to be able to cover the seams and gaps in the hive with this cover. We put this device on top of the frames. On top of the frames, bees usually put a sack or nylon, so that they don't get cold. But we want to do something to make the bees feel cold. When he feels cold, he thinks of gathering for us, so he comes to cover these parts with us, And finally, we can harvest this and use the propolis. This is our case. Another tool that we have a lot of work with is tools related to raising queens. Well, this is for raising queens, they call them poles. This is a normal frame, but there is also a special frame. We can use it. It is on the normal frame. There are times when we want to change our queen bee, because the queen has to be changed once every 2 years. The economic life of the queen is 2 years. So after 2 years, we should think about changing the queen. To change the queen, a series of tools are needed, which I will tell you. This is a pole and a cup, and a cage.